Last year, I asked all of you what your must-have Thanksgiving sides were, and you responded. So tonight, I'm going to show you how to make your favorite Thanksgiving sides that match chef way and possibly even better than you knew you could. So that way you guys can have, better options or maybe just different options at your Thanksgiving table this year. There's a lot going on in this video, so to keep things at a respectable length, we're going to cut the talk and get right to it. And as always, as mentioned in our last video, the recipes for all of these are going to be in the description, so that way you guys can take this home tonight and make something for your family this Thanksgiving. That being said, let's get started.
And we're kicking things off with our most voted side dish, the stuffing. And we're keeping it real simple with a traditional cornbread stuffing. So what I have in front of me is 1 loaf of a freshly baked cornbread. Now guys, you do not have to make your own cornbread for this. A store-bought loaf will work just fine. And all you're seeing me do here is break this down with my fingies. Now guys, if you don't like this, you can keep this symmetrical and cut them into some nice, cute little cubes. But we're going for a rustic, traditional Southern style dressing. Think of your grandma's house during the holidays. That's what I'm going for. So many textures. And after we got all of our beautiful cornbread broken down, we're going to put it back into the oven on a low temp of 250 degrees and let it dehydrate for at least 25 minutes. Otherwise, you will be making a sog fest and you'll be kicked out of the family. And now it's time to make our stuffing taste like stuffing. And in this pot is a half a stick of unsalted butter that's melting down. And to that, I'm going to be adding in 1 cup of a low sodium chicken stock. And guys, I know this already looks really weird because you don't see any fresh onion or celery, which is vital to any stuffing, but I didn't have any on hand. And like I mentioned in the last video, we're in the middle of a major winter storm, so both local grocery stores are completely blown out, so I had to make do with what I had. And to this, I'm going to be adding a seasoning blend that consists of 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, 2 teaspoons of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of ground sage, half a teaspoon of thyme, and half a teaspoon of dried rosemary that I've crushed into finer pieces. We're going to get that mixed in and add some freshly cracked black pepper to taste. And once that's fully incorporated, we're going to go ahead and let this continue to roll on a medium-high heat for about 4 to 5 minutes or until it begins to simmer. And once we notice that simmer start to happen, we're going to go ahead and add in the flavor bomb. This is going to level up the flavor of our stuffing to the next level, and this is just 1 teaspoon of Better Than Chicken Bouillon. This is going to pack some umami and some serious punch and separate this stuffing from the rest. And then we're going to get that nice and combined while completely destroying our stove like I am here. We're going to set this back on the stove for another 3 or so minutes until we have a little bit more of a simmer happening. And once we see a little more bubble action starting to form, we're going to go ahead and add in a thickener. This is kind of like a gravy of sorts. Now, I know what I just did looks bizarre, but we're going to pass this through a fine mesh sieve anyway. And that was just 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. Now, you can do a slurry if you like, but to ensure that this continues to break down and there are no lumps, we're going to be using a whisk to make sure that it stays broken down. And then we're going to continue whisking this over a medium-high heat for a couple minutes or until we start to see our sauce visibly thicken. And once it looks like this, we're just going to let this continue to simmer and thicken for another 2 to 3 minutes. And then I'm going to give it one last stir before taking it off the heat. And then I want to pass it through a fine mesh sieve to make sure there are no cornstarch lumps living in there and to filter out those dried rosemary pieces, because let's face it, they are not fun to eat. And now it's time to bring everything together. And in this large mixing bowl, I'm going to be dumping in all that beautifully dehydrated cornbread in. And before we go any further, we're going to very generously grease the inside of a 9x13 baking dish with some unsalted butter. And then goes in that beautiful flavor base. And then we're going to mix everything together until all this cornbread is nicely hydrated and we don't have any dry spots. And then we're going to take our first taste test, because if it doesn't taste good now, then we don't have a prayer whenever it comes out of the oven. And this is pretty solid. All it needs is a little bit of salt and pepper. And guys, it's always wise to season in stages, especially when using something like Better Than Chicken Bouillon. That stuff is so concentrated with both salt and MSG, it could create a situation where we could very easily over season this. Again, season lightly throughout. We can always add more seasoning in later because we can't take it back once it's inside. And we're not quite ready to put put this in the oven yet because we need to create a binder. This is essential. So what I've just done here is measure out 1 cup of a reduced sodium chicken stock, and to that I'm going to be adding in 1 large egg, and we're going to beat that until it's mostly homogeneous. And this is essential because it's going to bind all that loose cornbread together and make it that one thing. Also, it's going to help it retain its moisture while it's in the oven, and it's going to give us that classic stuffing sheen on the very top layer. So we're going to add that in and mix until everything is nice and homogeneous. And once you start to see all these cornbread pieces begin to bind, we're simply going to dump this out into our freshly greased 9x13 baking dish, smooth it all out, and then put it in the oven set to 350 degrees. This small portion of stuffing took, I want to say, about 35 minutes, but always do the toothpick test and make sure that it comes out clean. And I kept mine in a little bit longer because I wanted those crispy edges and that nice glossy top. So I will see you guys when this comes out. And after 35 minutes, the moment of truth is upon us. And behold, a very beautifully cooked stuffing. And let's take a good look at those corners because, guys, this crispy texture is what it's all about. And also, I'm making sure the top is nice and dry. And then we're just going to go ahead and season it up with a nice garnish of parsley. And there it is. Side number 1, the stuffing is done. And you guys know it ain't Thanksgiving without some taters, so let me show you how to elevate your holiday mash. And what's going in the pot here are just 6 large russet potatoes that I have peeled and diced into some quarters. And you guys may be wondering where the water's at. I kept it in the tap tonight because we're going to be elevating this by boiling them into some beautiful chicken stock. And of course, I'm using low sodium. You can use whatever kind of chicken stock you like. And to cover about 6 large potatoes like this, it takes pretty close to 48 ounces of stock to cover it. Fair warning, to make all these sides in this video, you're going to need an Armageddon supply of both chicken stock and butter. You have been warned. And once they're ready to mash, we're going to drain off all that beautiful chicken stock and hit it up with our good friend, the potato masher. And then we're just simply going to work this until we reach our desired consistency. If you're a fan of a potato ricer, you can use that as well. You do you. And once we've achieved our desired thickness, we're going to go ahead and hit this up with 1 stick of unsalted butter, and then we're just going to gently fold this in, and we're simply just going to allow the residual heat from our potatoes melt this butter as we continually fold it in. And once everything has been worked in and it's beautifully buttery and delicious, we are simply going to season to taste with some kosher salt and cracked black pepper, and then we're going to add in 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, and then we're going to add some milk, which I would normally use half and half, but there's none available. And then we're going to continue mixing this in until we've reached our desired creaminess, which I like a good creamy mash. And then we're simply going to top this with some nice parsley, not because we have to, but because we want to. And that is our beautiful holiday mash, leveled up and full of flavor. And now it's time to move on to arguably the most important side of all, the mac and cheese. But not just any mac and cheese, specifically a baked one. So all I've done is add in a 1-pound package of shells, some boiling water, and guys, you've seen this exact mac and cheese on the channel before, on the Virginia episode of Eating America, but since it's the holidays and we have some new people here, let's do it again. So all that's in this sauce pot is 1 stick of unsalted butter that I've melted down, and to that we're going to be adding in a half a cup of all-purpose flour and my signature mac and cheese seasoning that consists of 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, 1.5 teaspoons of ground mustard, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, half a teaspoon of garlic powder, and half a teaspoon of white pepper. And then we're just going to let that render off and cook for about 2 minutes. And then we're going to start slowly introducing our liquid, and in this cup is just simply 3 cups of milk, any kind will work. And then we're just going to add this in batches, making sure we fully hydrate our roux before adding more in. And guys, don't forget to adjust your temperature because this milk will drop the temp of your pot. So let's make sure we increase it as we go. And then once we've used up all that beautiful, beautiful milk and we have a nice thick and creamy sort of bechamel like you see here, we're going to go ahead and add in our cheese blend. And this is simply a 3 cheese blend consisting of sharp cheddar, mild cheddar, and mozzarella cheese, and this is an 8-ounce block of each. And we're going to introduce this slowly in half-cup portions, making sure that our cheese is fully melted into the bechamel before adding the next half cup, and we're going to repeat this process until we've used 2 cups of cheese, and by then we should have a nice thick and luxurious sauce that looks something like this. And once we've reached this point, don't worry, there'll be more cheese later on. We're going to take this off the heat and wait for our pasta to finish cooking. And speaking of pasta, we need to pull it about 2 minutes earlier than package instructions, because if we don't, it's going to turn to mush in the oven. And after we've done that and strained our pasta out, we're going to add all that beautiful cheese sauce in and make sure everything is wonderfully combined. And then we're going to grease up another 9 by 13 inch baking dish with some unsalted butter to keep things from sticking or burning. And then we're going to roughly add in about half of our prepared macaroni and cheese, making sure we spread everything out evenly. And then we're going to add on top of it about half of our remaining 3 cheese blend. Then we're going to repeat this whole process until we've assembled something that looks kind of like a mac and cheese casserole, kind of like what you see here. And then we're going to toss this bad boy in the oven on 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Normally I let this roll for about 17 minutes, but I do want some crispiness on the top of the cheese, so we're going to let this sit for about 20 minutes. And while that's going, we haven't forgotten about our gravy, because that's what's happening next. And the most beautiful thing about this gravy is it's going to come together and be finished within 10 minutes. It's super quick, but super flavorful. So what we've got in this pot is 1 stick of unsalted butter, and we're just melting that down over a medium-high heat. And once that butter is completely melted down, we're going to go ahead and hit it up with our seasoning blend. And guys, believe it or not, this is the exact same seasoning blend I used to make the flavor base for our stuffing. We just pretty much doubled up on about everything that went in. So I will leave an updated recipe for the seasonings of the gravy in the description. And once we've gotten all those beautiful seasonings mixed in, we're going to let it sit for about 45 seconds or until it becomes fragrant. And then we're going to add in 2 cups of that same low sodium chicken stock, which I've already dissolved into it 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. This way we have our thickening agent in the mix from the very beginning. And at this point, I'm switching out my spoon for a whisk so we can go ahead and get everything thoroughly combined and we start the thickening process. And once we've gotten everything thoroughly mixed up and we start to feel some resistance happening, I'm going to go ahead and add in some freshly cracked black pepper to taste, because I didn't add any at the beginning. And then this is where I screw up. I didn't have very much better than chicken bouillon base left in that container, so I figured 1.5 teaspoons of this wouldn't hurt, especially since we had more liquid to dissolve it in. I was incredibly wrong, and this turned out salty because of that. And then we're going to continue working this for probably another 3 minutes. We need to make sure we get that simmer back and things reduced. And once we have a nice, thick, luxurious gravy, our work is done, and all I got to do is pass this through a fine mesh sieve, and our gravy is done. And now that that's out of the way, our mac and cheese is out of the oven and looks absolutely beautiful. So all we're going to do is put some parsley on this bad boy, because it's just sexy and right. And then we have a beautiful, perfectly executed Thanksgiving mac and cheese. So all that's left to do here is line all of these beautiful sides up for the infinite money shot of what your Thanksgiving side should be. And let's dig in.
Alright guys, and that is it. And this is the plate. Only took about 3 hours to put this thing together, but I've got to wrap this up quick. So here is the chicken gravy. And look at that. I told you it would turn out to be absolutely perfect. So I'm just going to take this gravy and drizzle it on our potatoes and our stuffing. Only other thing that I did was just pass it through a fine mesh strainer to get out all those solid herbs, the crunchy stuff that you don't want. And this is a Cajun roasted turkey. I mean, not a turkey, but a chicken. So if you want a recipe on how I made the roast Cajun chicken, you know, it can also be applied to turkey. Just give me a comment down below and I'll remake this for you. But that's not the star of the show, so we're not talking about him right now. So let's get a fork and dig in. All right, first thing first, let's go ahead and try that stuffing with the gravy. It is definitely missing that celery for the crunch and the flavor. But everything else is so good. Definitely better than stovetop. I like the middle because I like the dense, moist stuffing. I don't like it to be too dry. but towards the edges and around here, this has got a lot of crunch to it and it's good. Our Deluxe mash. To die for. And that gravy is so good. And of course, the one from my region, the mac and cheese. In Virginia and the actual southern states below us, if you don't have mac and cheese on your plate at Thanksgiving, then you're not invited. Stringy, gooey, creamy. And then, I said we weren't talking about him, but we are. Super juicy breast. Nice flavor. Now, am I telling you to make all of these? No. But take one or take a couple. Make your twist on it. Stop eating from the box. Stop eating the pre-made stuff. It's Thanksgiving. And for a lot of us, that's the only time of the year that we cook. So why not cook something special from the heart to your family? I got to hurry up and eat this because I actually have surgery tomorrow. Well, in the real world, it is a week or two before Thanksgiving. Today is January the 5th. It's almost midnight. I have surgery tomorrow. It's January 6th, rather. So today is January 6th. It's almost midnight. I have surgery tomorrow morning. So this is the last chance I have to eat. And I'll see you in the next video. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Recipes of all of these, except for the chicken, are in the description. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.